The year was 1932, a time when the world was grappling with immense challenges. The Great Depression had its grip on America, leaving countless families in despair and struggling to survive. In the heart of Macon County, Alabama, poverty and disease plagued the black community, creating a dire situation that seemed almost insurmountable. Syphilis, a devastating sexually transmitted infection, cast a long shadow over their lives, affecting many and spreading unchecked. Then, a beacon of hope appeared on the horizon, promising relief and care. The United States Public Health Service, a symbol of authority and trust, arrived with a promise: free healthcare for black men suffering from what they called bad blood. This promise, however, was a cruel illusion, masking a much darker reality. The men of Macon County had unknowingly become subjects in a medical experiment, one that would stain the conscience of a nation for decades to come. For 40 years these men were lied to, manipulated, and denied effective treatment, all in the name of science and so-called progress. This was the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, a chilling testament to the darkest impulses of human nature and the insidious ways that racism can poison even the noblest of endeavors, leaving a legacy of mistrust and pain. To understand the Tuskegee Experiment, we must step back into the early 20th century. Jim Crow laws held sway in the South, enforcing a brutal system of segregation and discrimination. Black Americans were relegated to second-class citizenship, denied basic rights and subjected to constant prejudice. Healthcare was no different. Hospitals and clinics were often segregated and black patients received inferior care. Black doctors and nurses faced significant barriers to practicing medicine, further limiting access to quality care for black communities. This climate of inequality created a breeding ground for exploitation. The Tuskegee Experiment emerged from this toxic mix of racism, poverty, and medical neglect. It was a product of a system that devalued black lives and saw black bodies as tools for research rather than individuals deserving of care and respect. The study began under the guise of benevolence. Researchers from the U.S. Public Health Service descended upon Macon County, promising free medical care to black men suffering from syphilis. For many of these men, this was their first encounter with any form of health care. They were enticed with the promise of free meals, transportation, and even burial insurance. What they were not told was that they were participating in a study. They were not informed of their diagnosis, nor were they given the opportunity to provide informed consent. The researchers deliberately misled them, using the term bad blood, a catch-all phrase for various ailments, to describe their condition. The men of Tuskegee were trapped, their desperation for healthcare exploited to fuel a study that would go down in history as a monstrous breach of trust. The deception ran deep in Tuskegee. The men were subjected to painful and unnecessary procedures, disguised as treatments for their bad blood. Spinal taps, touted as a therapeutic intervention, were performed to collect data on the progression of the disease. They were given placebos, ineffective treatments designed to mask the true nature of the study. Throughout the 40 years of the study, the researchers went to great lengths to maintain the illusion of care. They sent the men letters thanking them for their participation in the study of their health. They provided them with aspirins and tonics, offering a false sense of hope while denying them the one thing that could truly help: a cure. In 1947, a breakthrough occurred that would forever alter the course of medicine. Penicillin was discovered to be an effective treatment for syphilis. This monumental discovery promised hope and healing for countless individuals suffering from the disease. This discovery presented the researchers in Tuskegee with a profound moral dilemma. They could choose to uphold their ethical obligations and provide the men with this life-saving treatment, effectively ending the study and saving lives. Instead, they chose to continue their unethical experiment. The allure of observing the natural progression of syphilis, unchecked by treatment, proved too tempting to resist. The researchers prioritized their scientific curiosity over human lives. The men of Tuskegee were denied penicillin, a known cure. They were left to suffer the devastating consequences of untreated syphilis, blindness, heart disease, mental deterioration, and ultimately death. The researchers actively intervened to prevent the men from receiving treatment elsewhere, ensuring their suffering continued. They went so far as to contact local doctors and instruct them not to treat the men enrolled in the study, perpetuating the betrayal. This deliberate withholding of a known cure transformed the Tuskegee experiment from a study into a death sentence, a dark chapter in medical history. For years, the Tuskegee syphilis study remained shrouded in secrecy, hidden from the public eye. Then in 1972, a whistleblower emerged. Peter Buxton, a former venereal disease investigator for the U.S. Public Health Service, had become increasingly troubled by the ethical implications of the study. He had raised concerns within the agency, but was met with resistance and indifference. Frustrated and determined to expose the truth, Buxton contacted the media. The story landed on the desk of Jean Heller, a reporter for the Associated Press. Heller, shocked by what she learned, began investigating. Her article, published on July 25, 1972, sent shockwaves throughout the nation. The public was horrified. Politicians were outraged. The Tuskegee syphilis study, once hidden in the shadows, was now exposed for the world to see. The public outcry was swift and furious. The Tuskegee syphilis study became a symbol of medical racism and government abuse. Lawsuits were filed, demanding justice for the men and their families. The government, initially defensive, was forced to confront the horrific truth of its actions. In 1973, a class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of the study participants and their descendants. The case was settled out of court for $10 million. The government also agreed to provide free healthcare to the surviving participants and their families. The Tuskegee syphilis study led to the establishment of the National Research Act in 1974. This landmark legislation created the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research. Its primary goal was to protect the rights and welfare of research participants. The Tuskegee syphilis study left an indelible mark on the Black community's trust in the medical system. The study reinforced existing fears and suspicions about the healthcare system, creating a legacy of mistrust that continues to this day. The study also had a chilling effect on medical research, making it more difficult to recruit minority participants for clinical trials. This mistrust has had far-reaching consequences for public health initiatives. Lower participation rates in clinical trials make it more difficult to develop safe and effective treatments for all populations. The Tuskegee syphilis study serves as a stark reminder of the importance of ethical research, informed consent, and the need to address racial disparities in healthcare. In 1997, President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology for the Tuskegee syphilis study, a dark chapter in American medical history. Standing before 5 of the 8 surviving participants, he acknowledged the government's wrongdoing and the pain it caused. He called the study shameful and a profoundly morally wrong chapter in American history, emphasizing the need for accountability. President Clinton's apology was an important step towards acknowledging the suffering inflicted upon the men of Tuskegee and their families, a step towards justice. However, an apology, no matter how sincere, cannot erase the past or the trauma experienced. The legacy of Tuskegee continues to cast a long shadow over the African American community. It serves as a constant reminder of the dangers of medical racism, the systemic injustices that persist, the importance of ethical research, and the need for stringent oversight, and the need to rebuild trust between the Black community and the healthcare system, a trust that has been severely damaged. The road to healing is long and arduous, but it begins with acknowledging the past and committing to a future where such atrocities are never repeated, ensuring a just and equitable society.